Hello for the 22nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. Using that first reading a little, Jeremiah 20, 7 to 9, and the Gospel, Matthew's Gospel. And the title of this is Get Behind Me, Satan. I like this terminology or this confrontation with Jesus and Peter very much because I think it tells us a lot about Peter, Jesus, and Satan. And maybe, is it talking about the devil? Or is the devil Satan? Well, let's look at that. Jesus just tells Peter right out, get behind me, Satan. You're not going to tell me what to do. You don't know what you're talking about. Get behind me, Satan. You're thinking only like a man or a woman. You're not thinking like God. Hmm. The word Satan is interesting. Way back when, the origin of the word Satan is it means adversary, like an adversary in war. Or it originally means the accuser, like a lawyer who had a trial. And then most of all, and I think where Jesus is coming from, like Satan in the book of Job in the Old Testament. Well, here in the book of Job, the word Satan is used, and this Satan is one of the sons of God. One of the sons of God who works in the royal court, and one of the sons of God who works for heaven and works for God himself. It's good. Hmm. Well, and Satan in there is not a proper name, like Larry or Jerry or Mary or whatever, but it's descriptive. It's an adversary, an accuser, or one who finds out things for God. It's not that proper name like Beelzebul or Lucifer or etc. So that's what we have to know to realize when Jesus uses this term, he uses the term like it is in the Old Testament. And Satan's not a bad angel or a devil, but Satan is God's faithful servant. And he's saying, you got it messed up, Peter. You don't know what you're talking about because you're only thinking like a man. You're not thinking like my Heavenly Father. My Heavenly Father has sent me here to suffer, die, and rise again. Well, I'm not saying this was the actual conversation, but in Jesus' mind, he was getting ready to go into Jerusalem to suffer, die, and rise again. And Peter just totally goes against that. If I can continue to paraphrase, Peter, in a sense, says, over my dead body are you going into Jerusalem because they're going to kill you there. And we know all along that later Jesus is in his public ministry, the more he realizes he's going to be murdered. He's going to be killed. He's going to be crucified. And this is not on the plane of a man or a woman's thinking, nor even the one who becomes the head apostle or the beginning of all the popes. He had no clue. And Jesus is upset with Peter because he's only thinking like the rest of the flesh or the rest of the world or the way a man or a woman normally thinks. And he calls him Satan. I think there's a lot in that. We really have a hard time with evil, don't we? Why does evil happen to good people? Why does this one get this evil and this one just lucks out or doesn't get it? It really is hard to understand the mind of God. It is hard to understand many of the methods that we sort of think God's doing. And we very easily, like all men and women, we very easily can sort of tell God when he's doing right, when he's doing wrong, when he's really doing a good job and when he isn't. When we have no bottom line clue. Peter there was in the latter days with Jesus. Jesus had some idea what's going to happen. How much? I don't know. But Peter had super duper less, none. Peter tells him not to go into Jerusalem because he'll be killed. Peter tells him, I'm not going to let you go into Jerusalem because you'll be killed. And Peter also denies him when all this happens that he knew Jesus 3 times. And yet in due time, Peter dies for Christ, being martyred on a cross, upside down, and becomes the legend in our Roman Catholic religion, the first pope. We fall into some of that same ideas, I think. We try to tell Jesus, or we try to tell God what to do, how to act, what would make sense, what we need. And sometimes it's so far from reality, but we don't have a clue. And we do it, some of these things out of love. I bet you Peter loved Jesus. And Peter wanted to follow Jesus. And yet he tells Jesus this. Well, Jesus had enough. And he says, get behind me, Satan, because you're thinking like a man or a woman thinks, and you're not thinking the way my Heavenly Father thinks. So you and I in our spiritual life takes a spiritual life and it takes a whole life to find out what is God thinking for me? What does God want for me? What is the message of Jesus for me? And we really want to think like one of those old time Satans in the book of Job, where we sort of turn it all over to and even work for the court of God, the court of Jesus, the way, the new way, the Christian way, the true Roman Catholic way, the way that Jesus has shown us how to live, and in a sense, told us how to live, and in a sense, commanded us how to live. And like Jesus has sent us his mother, who is a total model of what Jesus is talking about and how to live. I think this is an interesting encounter between Peter and Jesus. When Peter says, get behind me, Satan, you're not thinking right. You're thinking like men think today. Does that apply to you or me? I think so. I think it's a great insight. Have a good day.